Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Ed Juenka, and I'm here with Dr. Cindy George of Samoash Counseling. Good to have you again.
Good to be here. Thank you.
It's always good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
The conversation is always interesting. And I understand that the Helping Professionals Conference has been pushed back.
Yes. Postponed.
Postponed. And so you think we should have an update, a brief update on
Right, and as we talked, and I told you, it was just very recent, probably within the past 24 hours, the decision was made, and it's just really something that was just really beyond our control. My keynote speaker, who was really an integral part of the conference, she would have been on the Friday with all those techniques and skills that really, would have culminated the conference. She had a family emergency back in California. And so we communicated that a couple days ago. And even though we had that, I really didn't want to postpone the conference because I know that it's something great. I know that we had other arms to it. We had the camp. We had other things happening, but just really, in my profession, people are booked months in advance, and just was not able to get anyone at the short notice. We tried at least 3 or 4 people, and that would have been great, but just didn't have the time, the scheduling to do that. So we were forced to postpone. I am so happy to say I work with. I put a team together of great professionals because, they were like, don't worry about it, Cindy. We'll regroup. We'll definitely want to come once we reschedule. So everyone that was to come is still on board to come. I'm so happy to report that. But it's just a matter of working our schedules now to see when that would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now it was, as far as I understood, it was slated to be a really interesting conference. You were going to have persons, I guess you could call it trainer of trainers.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. These were educators. They're not only professors. They're educators in the sense of professors, and they also do trainings. You're absolutely right. My keynote speaker, that's what she does. She does that. She has a private practice in California, and she does trainings and workshops. Just that's all she does. So that's her life.
And we were expecting, of course, that they would be depositing some knowledge to help us to deal with family issues and our children issues, some social issues, so that we will be better able to mitigate certain situations developing in the territory.
Right, definitely. And one of the things that I said to my presenters, I said, we're going to have a broad spectrum. Yes, these are things that are possibly slated in the school system, such as autism, attention deficit disorder. But I said, when you do present, and let's have it cater not only to the school system but to parents. We had parents, grandparents that were registered, and so not just professionals, counselors or teachers, but people that just want to know more about their family members and to learn how to deal with them on a day-to-day basis.
You had a theme. Surviving the odds, children and families overcoming the odds with our help.
Correct, yes.
What do you see as some of the challenges that families and children are having today that we need real professional help to overcome?
Yeah. Well, in addition to what we were going to speak to, again, which was more in the school system, but again, as I said, all persons could have benefited. Some of the topics that we were speaking to at the conference were autism, attention deficit, child abuse, domestic violence, and just more so now speaking to the social aspects of it. We were going to touch on that as well. And some of the social things that I really wanted us to speak to was just really that sense of unity, the sense of family connectedness and communication. We see a lot of times, we wonder why children do things like steal. We wonder why they join gangs. We wonder why they may turn to certain lifestyles. Right? We wonder why these things happen. And in my experience, they happen because mainly because they don't have that sense of who they are or that sense of a connectedness to a family structure. And I think what we really wanted to show in our conference is to really identify some of those things. And then, okay, how can we then begin to help these children and adolescents? I know we say children, but we include adolescents as well. How can we then begin to help children and adolescents in their development? It's all about their social development, both psychological and social. And the psychological piece then goes back to, I always say, we have to be mirror images. We have to be models for our children, modeling our sense of who we are as individuals, our sense of self-acceptance of who we are, and not allowing ourselves to be downtrodden by other persons. And if our children see this, they will begin to model that. Modeling is such a big thing, and a lot of times we only recognize the negative. Oh, he fat, or oh, he like this, or he whatever. But if you model those positive things, those children will see them as well,
Well,
and do them in their lives.
Right. Well, and certainly what you're speaking of is behavior change, lifestyle change, different choices. And it's interesting because my other two guests coming on are going to be talking about lifestyle change from a health perspective, a physical and mental health perspective. And this seems to be now the buzz around the world about persons now begin to look at, taking a serious look at their behavior and modeling behavior, behaving a certain way and making certain choices themselves.
Right, behavior modification.
Now it seems to me we are up against a real serious challenge with international projection of a one lifestyle, that we are coming to believe that this lifestyle is harmful, and that a lot of the social ills and challenges for parents and children, the creation of single parent families, latchkey children, a whole slew of social challenges is resulting from this internationally projected and perpetuated lifestyle that we now begin, we feel now that we have to try to change or stem that tide, which seems to me is going to be quite a challenge for us as a people. How are we going to get to that point?
Yeah, and it is a challenge because once you've gotten used to something, once you've learned something, it's a learned something. It's really hard to then begin to come out of that. I think one of the things we need to begin to then do, and the word culture always comes to mind. I always say to people, we talk about so many different things, but there's always that cultural piece that we have to always recognize. Who are we as a BVI country, British Virgin Islands? And I think, you're absolutely right. I mean, when you speak international, I'm thinking national, US, Europe, and things like that. And I think if we begin to step back and take a look at who we are as Caribbean Virgin Islanders, what does that mean? What does our culture mean? What does our heritage mean? Okay? And what are some of the values? And we talk, oh my goodness, we talk so much about family values and family morals. What is that? What does that really mean? And what it really means is a system of a set of beliefs and a set of behaviors, attitudes that we begin to, accept, and we begin to embrace, and then we forge that. And then I think we have to go back and start looking at that. What are our attitudes? What are our thoughts about certain things? And is this in line with what it means to be a BVI Islander? Is this one in line to be a Caribbean person?
But doesn't it seem to you, though, that that whole Caribbean person, BVI Islander person that we are speaking of is perhaps even a byproduct of American in Europe person?
That could be true.
And do we really, when I look at and examine what we are calling our culture, I am seeing the plantation era mixed in there. I'm seeing European traditions and values and morals mixed in there. Then I'm seeing the modernization of the culture coming through the television and the music and the art and so on. And I'm wondering if we are truly understanding who we really are and the magnitude of change that needs to take place.
And as you're talking, Ajuinka, I think about, and you're absolutely right. I mean, you're talking about a BVI land, you're talking about a British Virgin Islands country that has changed so much over the years from when my grandparents, your parents, and even grandparents back in the 20s and 30s, we have had a lot of influx of other countries, and that's okay. Don't misunderstand me, there's nothing wrong with that because people move to different places and things happen. You're absolutely right. You may have a person that may be half BVI lander and have something else. But the point I'm getting at is I'm not saying that you have to give up that other half of you or give up the BVI lander half. What I'm saying is we have to begin to then find a balance. And we have to begin to find a balance that works within where we are. I think the key is what works where we are. And you're absolutely right. You may be watching something on television, or you may be seeing something on the American culture or somewhere else. And, we adapt those things. But do they work within our society? And we have to recognize the majority always wins. The majority always wins. And so when we talk about our culture, you're going to have so many different hodgepodge and so forth. But then the overall culture is the dominant. We had a little slide talking about dominance and recessiveness, right? Yeah. The dominant thing, and that's what you call your culture. But of course, you'll always have other pieces. And then and this one little piece, how do we then begin to live and to adapt within that? We have to forge towards the dominant culture. I'm not saying you can't do other stuff, but we have to live within dominant culture.
Well, yeah, and the question is, what is a dominant
culture?
What is dominant culture?
Yes.
Because what I'm seeing is European American culture as a dominant culture. And when we talk about people coming into the BVI and bringing different cultures, right? I don't see any difference between a Jamaican and, well, I shouldn't say I didn't see any difference. The difference between look, let me say it this way. Jamaicans and BVI landers and Kititians and people from up and down the Caribbean have more in common with each other than they have differences. Let's see if we could speak of a difference between a Jamaican and a BVI lander. See if we could speak of a difference. A culture.
Now we're getting into culture, and that's not my specialization.
But what I mean is though, whenever I hear about difference, cultural difference among Caribbean people, I hear about music, and I hear about food, and then and that's what but we worship the same God, we speak the same language, we wear the same clothes, we have the same values, our morals are the same. We of course there are exceptions. We break those traditions, we break those values. Like in any society, you have the persons who act contrary to social norms.
Right.
But when you look at social norms generally, we basically have more in common than we have than difference.
Yeah.
And I would go as far as to say that commonality is more a Eurocentric commonality in Eurocentric tradition than it is Afrocentric tradition, which is our ancestral heritage. And this is where I think we get mixed up with who we really are and making those changes. And yes, and while culture is not our specialty,
yes.
It is something that will have to come to bear on the interventions for social change.
True. And as you're speaking, Ajuinka, I'm thinking about, like you said, in terms of what is the dominant culture. And I think about what I had said earlier in terms of who we are, recognizing who we are as individuals, who we are as individuals tied to our society, tied to our heritage. And again, not to get into the whole cultural thing, because again, that's not my area, but I would imagine that one of the things that's essential really is to recognize your heritage. And how do you keep that heritage and sustain that heritage over time? Because I think that is the key to then building and having that continuance of your culture. Because even if you can have all the people, different cultures that come into the British Virgin Islands, right? But if we as a society, as BVI Islanders, maintain that heritage, I mean, maybe I'm being naive, but I don't necessarily see how that can fade away if it's kept up.
Well, if we practice it,
You understand what I'm saying? If we practice
it's
it,
not being kept up because we don't practice it. You know, we think it's something that you put up on the shelf in August, Monday, you trot it out and you dress up in it and you parade it around.
So it's sustained. It needs to be a continuous something.
Yeah. And now, the economic aspect of the social challenges, you know, latchkey kids, single parent families,
moms working,
domestic
jobs.
violence, parent neglect of children. You know, you have a situation right now where single parent mothers are working 2 jobs, fathers are absent, mothers are working 2 jobs and to make ends meet. Then you have those families that are intact. Both parents are working, some trying to keep up with the Joneses, others just have to take care of 3, 4, 5 children. And in an economic situation where wages are not enough, the cost of living is too high. So you have these economic factors now that is really having an impact on the family structure and by extension, of course, the children.
Correct.
So, my question is always, do we want to deal with these issues in a comprehensive and a holistic way, or we just want to keep babbling about the superficiality of the condition? You know.
Yeah. And you know, and that's a good question, because and I think about culture and how that can again tie into the economic piece. I mean, you know, even thinking about what do we do in terms of a lot of our job market or job force, if you want to call it that. And like you say, there's certain things that may not pay enough. A woman might have 3 kids, but she's only making minimum wage. You know, what is it in our culture that says, you know, this person may only be able to have this certain job? What is it that says in our culture, okay, you have to have this, you know, certain thing to move on in that realm of society? And it goes back to the socioeconomic side of this. It goes back to how we label persons and things like that. So you know, when I talk of culture isn't just like you say, August, when they dress up and all that, but it's your attitude, it's your thinking, it's your behavior. And I'm going to say this, and I might get in trouble, but sometimes you wonder if your own culture oppresses you. You know, you wonder if your own culture oppresses you, because who says that a person can only do X, Y, or Z based on where they're from or based on their socioeconomic status. Perhaps that's an attitude in the culture. I don't know.
Well, it's been an attitude in culture for a long time. That's socioeconomic status that we have, that dichotomy in human development that we have accepted for many years as a part of our tradition. When I was growing up, perhaps not so much so for younger persons as yourself, but certainly as older persons, like my father, that was a major aspect. You know, illegitimate children. We are having a status of children bill that's coming through the house, and that's a major piece of legislation now. But back then, when my father was growing up, for example, you know, he was known as a bastard, and by virtue of his birth, he was a lower class, based on what society held.
And based on that, then he may not get certain opportunities or likened certain things because of that.
But his confidence as a child is shattered. His self-esteem.
And that goes back to again what we were talking about, the sense of self, who you are. It's like a circle. It's like a circle.
So, I think the conference, when it comes, is going to be quite fascinating
Oh,
because I
definitely.
think those are some of the issues that we need to have dealt with, and I think that those are some of the issues that you intended to,
Oh,
to
sure.
deal with in the conference.
Definitely.
We're
And-
following
and-
it during the clock.
Oh, and speaking to the conference, I just want to say, I know we said it's we talked about it being postponed, and we're definitely going to get a time frame later on. But I just want to say thank you to all the persons that supported the conference, whether it be in wanting in their attendance of having attended, or in any other form, sponsorships or anything like that. Much greatly appreciated, and we look forward to all of that next coming in when we reschedule. Yeah.
Good to
Thank
see you
you.
as usual.
Good to
thanks,
be here.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for having
all
me.
the best, and keep up your community activism
Yeah,
and the community
I sure
work.
will.
Yes, we're gonna
Without
take a
a
break.
doubt.
We're gonna take a break for a word from our sponsors. When we come back, we're gonna come back with Miss Ivy George and Ms. Christine Bocage, and they're with the Ministry of Health and Social Development. Ms. George is with the Ministry of Health and Social Development, and Ms. Bocage is with the Caribbean. Lord, I forget the name of the thing. The Caribbean Public Health Agency. Yes, there you go. Had a senior moment there. I claim my senior moments. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by Tortola Concrete Limited and H. Labadee Stout Community College.